Number one. Okay. Good afternoon. Please, everyone, have a seat as we get ready here for the last panel of the conference. First of all, how was the conference? Wonderful. And hopefully you're going to come back again next year. Tell everybody you know about it. As we know and as you've heard already, Sunday is Palestine Day. And always now, obviously the last 2 years means everything is Palestine Day. But traditionally at the ADC conference, Sundays are Palestine Day. And so we are closing off the conference with a wonderful, wonderful panel that we have here to really put a button on everything that we've been talking about at this conference and to talk about rights, law, the genocide in Gaza, academia, and how it all connects. So we have three wonderful panelists to finish off here at ArabCon. Please help me welcome from the UN, Abdelhamid Siyam. We also have, and you've all seen him on social media, from Al-Quds publication and at the State Department every day, Saeed Arakat. And of course, academic, fierce lioness of us Palestinians, Dr. Rabab Abdulhadi. I'll leave this here for you, Dr. Rabab. So we are here as we close out to talk about, to kind of put a button on everything at the conference. And I can't, as a Palestinian American kid who grew up with two activist parents, going to every event before there was internet and meeting everybody who taught us how to be Palestinian, I can't think of three better people to be on the stage with us here as we close everything out. All of you are operating in different worlds, but for the same goal, all rowing the same way as we navigate these last 2 years. I think the biggest gift that we can get as we close out this conference is to hear and learn from your experience, and to hear how you've been navigating obviously your whole careers, but especially these last 2 years as we are entering a whole new world. And so I'll start with you, Abdelhamid. You've been a fixture in the UN and asking the tough questions. We've all seen you. How have you, and then of course, as we all know, 2 days ago, and maybe you can tell us if you would have ever imagined, 2 days ago, half the delegation's walking out when Netanyahu walks into the room. How have you seen things change in the last sort of long term, but especially, did you see this change coming? Were you surprised by all of this? Is this an arc that you saw us finally getting to in the UN?
Thank you so much, Amer. Thank you, audience, to stay to the last minute. I hope this panel will conclude a great, great conference. I have been working for the UN for many years as a staff. Then I left the UN, I resigned, in fact, and I came back as a journalist. But those last 2 years were the hardest, honestly, because it put everything in perspective. We have seen hypocrisy, we have seen cowardice, we have seen coward officials who does not talk straightforward to the facts, and we have to struggle through it. I have to struggle with, first, the senior UN officials and with the ambassadors and foreign dignitaries who come to the UN speak, and with journalists and UN spokesmen. So that is my daily routine. On terms of UN officials, in fact, almost all of them were late to recognize the fact there is a genocide in Gaza. And that is one of my daily fight with them. Do you recognize there is a genocide? Hardly anyone dare to use that term, including the Secretary General. How many times we try to corner him and see, look, everyone is calling it genocide. Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Bernie Sanders call it genocide. Everyone is calling, even B'Tselem called it genocide. Why you don't call it genocide? And he said, this is not my, it's not in my capacity to call it genocide. Or there is the ICJ, which could call it genocide. But ICJ could take years to reach that conclusion. In fact, ICJ gave Israel extra year. They're supposed to conclude the debate by the end of 2026. And by early January 2027, give the legal opinion, if it's genocide or not. Now they gave it until 2028. It might take years also. However, with that struggle with the Secretary General, also we have to struggle with other senior officials. Imagine the one who is in charge of children. Her name is Virginia Gamba from Argentina. She put a report about children in 2024. And in that report, she said 1,259 children were killed in Gaza. We were stunned by this number. I told her, what are you talking about? This is more than this number is killed in 1 month. How could you put this fact? Oh, we said, oh, we have to, only what we were able to verify, only. And there was a meeting in the Security Council on children, and she spoke about children in Sudan only. And when there is a meeting on children in Palestine, and she was called to speak, when the Algerian ambassador started talking about children, she walked out. This is the kind of a struggle we have to face. And the only few people who mentioned genocide is Francesca Albanese, which you're very familiar with. She has the courage to name things the way they are. But she's not UN official, unfortunately. Right. She's not a staff. She's working on her own capacity as special rapporteur. And special rapporteurs are not considered speaking on behalf of the UN. Yes. They're speaking on behalf of their own knowledge and capacity and experience. Another person was able to say this word in the Security Council. Tom Fletcher, who's the humanitarian coordinator, when he in the speech said, are you going to be waiting until you seeing genocide is committed in Gaza? And everything broke loose against him. They asked him to apologize. And since that day, which was May 5, he didn't mention that word again. And they're still after him. So they don't let anyone. When the SG himself, on October 24, 2023, in one of his speeches, he said, October 7 did not come from vacuum. And they asked him to resign. And they asked him to apologize. And they told him, you are disconnected with our word. And since that day, he did not repeat it. And I asked him, Mr. Secretary General, why you didn't repeat that term? Why you mentioned it once but never mentioned it again? And he answered me saying, but I always talk about what happened in Gaza. I mentioned October 7, but also I mentioned what is going on in Gaza. So he's trying to avoid my answer. But there are so many things to talk about, but I want to tell you lately that the new president of the General Assembly, probably you have seen that, she was the foreign minister of Germany, and she spoke in the parliament on July 10, 2024, and she said, Israel has the right to destroy civilian facilities. If they hide in schools or hospitals, they have the right to go after them. So on September 9, she was sworn in as the new president of the General Assembly. She walked out, and I was lucky to get a question. She took only 3 questions. And I told her, do you distance yourself from what you said in the parliament? And she said, are you misquoting me? She lied to my eyes. But then there is 700,000 who retweeted and quoted her, what she talked in the parliament, quoting my question and her answer to show that she is lying in front of our eyes. This is a daily suffering we go through. But nowadays, now there is more and more coming to believe it's a genocide, has nothing to do with October 7. It's a premeditated plan to obliterate the Palestinian people, starting in Gaza, and they will go to the West Bank, and they expanded it to Syria and Lebanon, which hardly they talk about it in the UN, and they focus on the humanitarian issue in Gaza only. And what happened in the General Assembly that day, which you saw, was a result of this conviction now that Israel cannot hide. Yeah. It's clear. It's a genocide in front of the world's eyes. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdelhamid. So, Saeed, we were all of us on social media were victims of Matthew Miller as we watched him in the State Department. And you had to sit there every day and we would watch, you know, I just because I've known you I was able to like see the just see the frustration that in your face of what we were all going through. And now he's not there anymore, and all of a sudden they're saying, you know, the truth. Yeah. What is that like, you know, dealing with that every day to try to, it seems to me sometimes your job is almost just trying to squeeze the littlest thing out of them, a little bit of truth out of them. Right. And, you know, as journalists, that's what you're trying to do. But talk to us a little bit about sort of the same question I asked Abdelhamid. Is there an arc going in the right direction? Do you feel like we're making any progress there? Would you still encourage journalists to sit in those rooms?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, everyone. I love your shoes.
Thank you, sir.
No, those are great shoes. Yeah, I mean, look, whether it's Matthew Miller or Ned Price before him, or all the others that preceded them, they basically stick to the same thing. I mean, Israel is their baby. They're going to say everything possible. They're going to twist the truth. They're going to rework the truth to fit their narrative. And their narrative that Israel is being, you know, is the victim. Israel is the one that's constantly being attacked and so on. So their narrative is Israel has a right to defend itself under any circumstance. I mean, I've asked over the years so many times, do Palestinians or other people have a right to defend themselves? Does Syria have the right to defend itself because they were striking Syria all the time? Does Lebanon have a right to defend itself? They never answer this. But Israel has a right to exist and has a right to defend itself. That is basically, you know, the one statement, the one narrative that all administrations, all their spokesmen, whether the White House, the Pentagon, or the State Department, that is my beat, it's all the same. With Miller, you know, I mean, it says, Miller came to be the spokesman, I think in May of 2023. I mean, he was not there for a very long time, you know, just a few months before, you know, before Gaza, before the October 7 happened and so on. And the one thing, you know, that I and he had back and forth all the time over is that things did not begin at October 7. And they insist that things began October 7. Things have changed on October 7. And I think, you know, in their minds, October 7 showed that the Palestinians are able to fight back. It shows that the Palestinians are able to attack. They keep repeating that if, you know, we want to make sure that Hamas, you know, does not have the capacity or will not have the capacity to do October 7, to do another October 7 and so on. And they basically are saying that the Palestinians have no right to resist. That's the whole idea. The whole idea that the world saw that Palestinians, under the most difficult of conditions, are, you know, driven to fight back, driven to basically assert their rights, driven to say that we exist, that whatever you try all throughout, whether it's agreements, whether it's, you know, these sham normalizations, agreements, and so on, whatever it is, it's not going to deter the Palestinians from fighting for their cause, fighting for their land, fighting for their freedom. And that's the one thing that they could never take. That's the one thing that they basically will continue to whether, you know, blind themselves to it or twist the truth or change the truth to fit their narrative. You know, when we talk about how do they respond, you know, to our question, not only myself, but also all my colleagues. You know, I think that all my colleagues have always been asking the right question, But you don't see that. You're not going to see it on their nightly news, whether it's CNN or ABC or NBC. But they're journalists. They ask the right questions. They write. They pose the right issues and so on. They never answer. I mean, whether it's me or somebody else, there's always some sort of a kind of camouflaged answer or an answer that does not really address the issue as it should be. Now, you asked what is the trajectory, how it's moving. It's very bad. Now we don't have briefings because, with this administration.
I was about to say, we don't see you anymore.
Well, no, exactly. There are no briefings. We have something called the gaggle, where we get together. And, there's something called the bullpen. There's about 18 of us in an area where we have desks and so on in the State Department. And we get together every other day or sometimes every day and so on. We meet either with officials and we meet with the deputy spokesman now because the spokesman left. She was thrown out or kicked up to the United Nations. But you're not allowed to write about it because it's completely off the record. It's not even on deep background. So we meet them, but it's useless because, you ask them the right questions. I mean, some awful people like Steve Witkoff's deputy, a guy by the name of Lightstone and so on. I mean, he parrots out the Israeli propaganda. He's a Hasparati by every sense and so on. So since January 20th, we have had, beginning in February, we had a spokeswoman named Tammy Bruce. Now she's been sent, but she was awful. She was terrible with me, because they treated me as the enemy. I mean, they treated me as an enemy. I was led to believe that any moment they are going to throw me out of that bullpen that we call the bullpen. And ever since then, we have her deputy. I mean, he's good. He's knowledgeable and so on, but he's not allowed to say much. So keep in mind that what we have today is someone in the White House, the President of the United States of America. He basically controls foreign policy, he controls security policy, and he's the spokesman for everything. He's the spokesman for his own administration. So our job or our ability to ask or to hold their feet to the fire is basically has diminished a great deal. Thank you.
So, Professor Rabab, we all saw you get this Lifetime Achievement Award last night from ADC, and we're all very proud of you.
Thank you.
So I've on stage for a long time, I have said before October 7th, because this wasn't a trend to us, we've been doing this stuff before October 7th. And for a long time I've said, the Israelis have tried everything to get rid of us. And, you got to feel bad for these people. They're not very good at it. And you're kind of like the actual embodiment of that. They have tried everything to get rid of you. And I always say there's only one reason you try to silence the other side. That's because you're lying. And you want to silence the truth. And now you are in the world of academia, as we all know, and been talking about Palestine for forever. And of course, things have ramped up last few years, then Sheikh Jarrah, and then of course, October 7th. So it's in the same vein. What is the trajectory that you see? Are you optimistic of things in academic circles, and how have the attacks on you, I know they haven't softened from the Zionists, but have you found even more solidarity after October 7th? What is all your feelings about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, and thank to my colleague who are always pushing, because I'm watching all of the stuff that's going on, and I also see the silencing and the shadow banning, so nothing that you do actually, unless you follow the Arab press, you don't see anything. And thanks to the ADC for continuing and being resilient after 45 years and going, and to the audience, and to you, Omar, and to our community. That's amazing. Secondly, I think that for the resilience of the community for the struggle. Secondly, by the way, they haven't softened. Actually, the attacks are continuing, and they continue. They issue one report after another, and they're now using other things, mixed up stuff, and issuing reports. And it's very nasty. It's scary because they are targeting it towards the new ways of the Trump administration targeting people. I would say I am lucky in the sense that we are lucky compared with what's going on to the people in Gaza, the people in the refugee camps in Jenin, in Tul Karim, the creeping annexation that's happening in the West Bank, the draconian measures that are going on against our people in the 48 areas. What we're facing is terrible, it's horrible, but I think like a lot of the times what keeps me going is that I see we're doing nothing compared to what people are facing back home. So whatever we're doing. That's one thing. The second thing is that, yeah, I'm feeling very, I have what I would argue, I believe in revolutionary optimism, which is not an expression from me, it's an expression from Frantz Fanon.
Say that again so everyone hears it.
Revolutionary optimism.
That's good.
This is a term that many revolutionary theorists engage organic intellectuals, if you will. These are words that were said in one way or another. If you say Gramsci in Italian, you will say Frantz Fanon when he was writing in French about the Algerian revolution. Our intellectuals, and you read, by the way, some people become very well known, but they are actually happening in the Palestinian literature. They're happening elsewhere. But you know how also knowledge gets produced. Some things get very well known because they are in English or in French, in the languages of colonizers, and some of the things don't get known because they are in Arabic or in languages of the colonized. So this is also how knowledge gets produced, but it is about people continuing pushing. And if people have any question about that, you'd ask, how is it that Palestinians, after over 100 years of attempts by the Zionist project to erasure, to force the Palestinians from their land, to change the ecology completely, even change the trees, bring foreign trees. I mean, not implant only colonizers from Europe, colonizers, but even colonizing trees in the area. And they keep saying, why are the fires keep happening in the Carmel Mountains? I mean, why? Why? Because you're putting things that don't belong in a place that don't belong. You know, it's like, it doesn't really make sense. Taking over Palestinian culture, taking the hummus, the maftool. I mean, all of the stuff they keep taking, it's not working. And this is the problem, is that they do not learn. It's good. It's good that the colonizers and the oppressors do not learn. They don't learn from history. You think that you take a book and you say, didn't they, after 9/11/2001, show the Battle of Algiers? They showed all of these books, the Frantz Fanon books, to the people in the Pentagon. They brought it and they showed them and so on. You need to learn how you can pacify the people in Afghanistan and Iraq. What happened today? Let's fill the papers of history and think about what's going on. So this was what's happening also in the academy. When we talk about the young people, and I don't want to say the kids, because I don't want to infantilize the students, and I don't want to patronize them, because they know. They learned, and they took what they learned, and they applied it, and they used the knowledge, because this is what you do. You're supposed to learn what you're learning and do it. And they turned it into a social movement. And they engage, when you say encampment, that you set up camps in reference to Palestinian refugee camps. You put tents, and in the tents you're sitting there and engaging in pedagogy. And people say of the oppressed, in terms of Paulo Freire, but we know Sheikh Izzeddin al-Qassam was engaging in the Kuttab.
That's right.
People were. So I think it's really important to also think about that and see that people continue struggling everywhere. Israel in the Intifada 87, I don't call it the first Intifada. I hate the first and the second and so on.
Not.
But they were engaging, they were learning. They closed the schools, all the women's associations, because Israel has this racist, Orientalist view of women. We are always cooking and baking and so on. Okay, so you're stupid. You think this is what we're doing? We're saying we're taking care of the children, and they're teaching popular education. So then Israel passed penalty measures against the women who are doing that. I mean, this is kind of like you take everything, and you use every single ways of measure, anything in your life and so on, in order to change things, to use them for resistance. And if the colonists, if the oppressors think whatever they think, who cares? Let them think whatever they think. You never are going, and I think one of the biggest mistakes at some point in the history of the Palestinians is always trying to convince the colonists, the oppressors, that we're nice people. Why do we need to convince the oppressors?
Right,
They will never, they're killing us day in and day out. Why do we need to convince them? We don't need to. What we need ourselves to decolonize our mentalities. This is really important to get rid of عقدة الخواجة. Talk with ourselves and our people and our allies. And when we see solidarity happening all over the world, when we see our colleagues, students on campuses, defying everything, defying all these draconian measures, where the university campuses are colluding with the administration, the repression measures, the police, ICE, they are giving names. Like Berkeley, 160 names, they gave they gave the names, the university, to the ICE and the university, the Trump administration, just like McCarthyism. Now we heard that California State University, a university in which our campus is, and accusing them of anti-Semitism. Now they are investigating all of us. They're doing all of this stuff. They're colluding with them. These are not administrations that will ever change. These are administrations that we need to consider them as part of the oppressors, and we collaborate with each other, organize ourselves with Palestinian universities that are called terrorist universities, half of whom in Gaza were all destroyed. There is no education. Half of the professors are gone, half of the students are gone, and this is what we need to be doing. This is when we study with our colleagues all over the world. Yes, there is something changing in the academy, and we need to change our colleagues who only think of their own careers and think that they are learning just for the sake of learning in order to make more money, in order to get promoted. Even our own, if you don't mind, Abdelhamid, to say, Professor Abdelhamid, all the classes were taken, they cut off. And this is one of the steps the administration do. They take your classes from you and they say it's a budget issue, austerity measures. Right. And we say, if it's austerity measure, how come the administrator president gets 10% raise? If you have 10% more, why don't you give the professors their jobs? If you have more money, give the professors their job. Why are you adding more tuition? So there is all of these things that they do in order for them to silence us, because there is a Zionist project to criminalize Palestine, delete it from the curriculum, because they're so afraid when people know the truth, people who have no agenda. Look at what's going on in the streets of the US, in polls, in the streets of the world, in the flotilla and elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it is so stark to me what's happening in America. As I was a college student, I was at the University of Michigan, and we would rent a van and drive down to the ADC convention in 1990. I don't know if Khalid's here, but we used to do that stuff. Dr. Khalid, or Professor Khalid Beydoun. Yeah. We used to do that stuff in 1996, 97, 98, and we would never get any funding. And of course, now things are changing on campuses, and so there is that change. But I'll come back to you, and after these introductory comments, I think it's so awesome. And as we move on, let's do about 2 minutes per answer, because I want to get out as many questions as I can. But Abdelhamid, so let me go piggyback off my first question. Are you optimistic for what you're seeing at the UN? Okay, these people walked out. Okay, there seems to be some movement. Is that going to translate into the higher ups, obviously not the Trump administration, but are we going to see, do you think that that there are big changes at the UN when it comes to Palestine in store for us?
Thank you. We have to think of the UN on two levels. The staff, who are a little bit scared if they're losing their job or being stigmatized, and the diplomats. And both groups interact in the UN. So when it comes to representative countries, yes, we see more support. We see great speeches by the ambassador of Guyana. I think she is one of the most eloquent speakers. And Slovenia. These are really great ambassadors, and they give great speeches, and we're really proud of them.
Just so that people understand what you're talking about. Yeah. The diplomats, you mean the people that work for the missions of the countries at the UN, who represent their countries, and then the staff is the people who work for the actual UN.
For the UN.
Right. They're scared of their job. Right.
So when it comes to staff, they are very careful, because they're being watched. For example, the UN assigned somebody called Sigrid Kaag from the Netherlands to be the super humanitarian coordinator. She spent months, we didn't know what she do, and she withdrew from the UN. We didn't know why. She was a cover-up for what is called the floating, what is called
Floater.
huh?
Floater, moving from place to place.
The seaport that the U.S. established on the shore of Gaza.
That, yes.
Yeah, the floating, whatever. So
the floating dock, the floating dock, the U.S. thing. Yeah.
It came, and it was a scheme to allow people to infiltrate and go kill some Palestinians.
Sure.
The same thing with GHF now.
Yeah.
The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. It's a cover-up. And they had a meeting between you and senior officials and the executive director of this organization, which is a trap to kill many Palestinians. Imagine someone called Pamela Patton. She is in charge of sexual harassment in the time of conflict. She went to visit Israel for 2 weeks and a half, and she stopped 2 hours in Ramallah.
Yeah.
And she came up with a report that you can think that the Palestinians are waging a genocidal war against the Israelis. Same thing with another person called Alice Indiritu, which she is in charge. She is the special advisor on the Convention of Preventing Genocide and Punishing for it. She's that in charge of genocide. And again, when she put the first report, exactly, you think the Palestinians are waging a genocidal war against Israel. So our problem with these things, they are changing even the language now in the UN, those officials. I asked the spokesman, why you keep saying Kerem Shalom? It's Karim Abu Salim. The Israeli took it,
right,
and they put it in their land. Why you call it Temple Mount? Show me any document in the UN that call Al-Aqsa Mosque the Temple Mount. Why are you adopting the Israeli language? I asked him one day, and the whole, probably 40 journalists there, are you, next time you're going to say Judea and Samaria? So, so he was stunned right there. So that's what our struggle, The double standard also. One Yemeni missile landed in Haifa, I think, and killed 1 person. Well, there was a strong statement condemning that. Okay? Then why, when there is a missile that kills a whole family? Every single day there's 30, 40, 50. Now the number of people killed on daily basis is missing from the daily briefing. I have to fill up that missing link every single day. So I start my comment, 45 people were killed. Why you didn't mention it in your briefing? Why? We have mentioned the targeting civilians. That's not my question. One more thing about the language also. There are three kind of words they use all the time. Express concern, and appalled, and sometimes they say deplore, and condemn. The word condemn is reserved for the Palestinians. They don't use it. They don't dare to use it sometimes. Now talking about diplomats, it's a little bit different. Again, it depends on the policy of that government. I mean, the ambassador of Colombia is different from that the ambassador of Albania. Albania, he said, I'm going to talk about all those tragedies around the world. And he started talking about Tigris in Ethiopia and Yazidis in Iraq. But he didn't mention Palestine. I asked him, Mr. Ambassador, this issue has been on the UN agenda from the very first day of its inception. How could you forget Palestine? He said, I'm sorry. It didn't come to mind.
Typo.
Imagine that. And Linda, my last story. I have so many stories to tell. Linda, the former ambassador of the US, Linda Greenfield.
Under Biden.
Yeah. I told the Madam Ambassador, when a Ukrainian fight the Russian occupiers, then he's a hero in your eyes. And even there is programs on your TV to teach the Ukrainian how to make firebombs. And you glorify their struggle. But when a Palestinian fight the same occupation, then you label him as a terrorist. Could you explain it for me? She was answering every question from her mind. Then when I asked that question, she pulled a paper and she started reading. We support the two-state solution with all that nonsense, She couldn't. And it went that my question and her answer went viral all over the world because she was too coward to answer my question. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Saeed, should, there was before Musab had his reading, there was a panel of the Breakthrough News people.
I saw that.
And hopefully there's young journalists here, and you have inspired, both of you, all of you have inspired a lot of young Arab American journalists. But would you advise them to go down that road and try to sit in the State Department hearings, or should they go out on their own and start these alternative medias? Do we need both? Is there still value to doing the sort of like, I don't know what the right word, establishment type stuff of, being in these official rooms? I think there is. I saw what you all did when there were actual briefings, but are you optimistic about the influence that we might have in those sort of establishment rooms?
Yes, but let me, before answering that, I want to refer to something that was mentioned about the floating pier. Yeah. Because that was,
By the way, you can say whatever you want, just because I asked a question.
I understand. Because the floating pier came into its lifespan was something like 2 months.
Yeah.
Okay. It was placed there. Then they had maybe a couple of trucks go in. Then they say weather was not cooperative, as if the Mediterranean is such a turbulent kind of shore and so on, which is not. Then we know that they used it. I mean, they could deny all they want, but in fact they used it when they attacked the camp on June 8, 2024, and they liberated whatever, they freed like 3 or 4 hostages and so on, and killed about 400 people. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, lo and behold, they say, well, this is not really a good way to deliver aid and so on. So keep in mind, whatever the United States does, it does for Israel and does against the Palestinians. That is the fact. Keep that in mind. If you look at the so-called GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, this is also found, and we listened to Aguilar, speak about this issue. This was created basically to, first of all, as a death trap for the Palestinians. They have killed maybe 3,000. We don't know the real figure and so on. It was an effort to replace the genuine organization that can actually distribute food and so on. So every step that the United States takes is basically a well-deliberated step, and it is a step against the Palestinians, because let's face it, the United States of America is the hyper-imperialist capitalist country that will continue to run. They use Israel as a tool. Keep that in mind. And who follows whom? It is actually Israel that follows the United States of America. They will not be able to do anything without the stamp of approval. Now, going to your question, I'm sorry, but this is something that, to your question, yes, absolutely. I think that, it is an honorable vocation, an honorable profession. It doesn't pay you much. I haven't been paid, I don't know how long, I can't even count. So it doesn't pay much, but somebody's got to hold their feet to the fire. You have to tell the truth. You have to ask the tough questions. You have to be able to pay the price. Now, keep in mind, American media, and I teach a course on media, American media are big companies. They are big capitalist companies and so on. They have always been this way. They have always been this way. Their mission and their objective is basically to forward American imperialist policies. Period. That's what you see on CNN. That's what you see in the New York Times. That's what you see in the Washington Post and so on. And we should not be afraid to say this. Now, we have colleagues that are really professional from these organizations and so on, and they do the good job. But there's also today, as Rania was speaking, and Eugene today, they spoke of the alternative media, and it's out there. It's out there, and we should be, the internet and the social media is providing an amazing public square for debate and so on, for forward. And look what's happening. I mean, what happened to TikTok, for instance? What happened to TikTok is definitely driven by the support for the Palestinians. Larry Ellison is one of the worst Zionists. He's the richest man in the world, by the way. He bypassed Elon Musk. And his mission is basically to silence pro-Palestinian voices and so on. That means that those alternative voices, alternative media, has been very, very effective. So yes, I encourage everyone. I wish, I want to see in the briefing room, because briefings will come back. No matter what, they will come back. So I want to see in the briefing room young Palestinian men and women sit there and pose the questions and so on. Because I tell you what, the moment you walk in and you're a Palestinian journalist, they get shaken up. Just by the mere fact that you are there.
They're just scared of us.
Yeah, they are, and they say, I remember in years past during the Obama administration and so on, and I would be walking the hallways and, Jen Psaki was the spokesperson, and she would come to me and say, what are you going to swing on me today? What are you going to, do? So they are very uncomfortable that there's actually Palestinian journalists and Palestinian press, and they can garner a section or a space in this media. So the short answer, yes, please do it, because we need you out there.
Yeah. So, Professor Rabab, I have two questions in this part. Is that, so we've seen obviously the students on campuses, but there's also then the academia, the professors, and who seem to be also more comfortable now talking. Have you seen that among your colleagues, that they've been, and how much we sometimes get uncomfortable talking about October 7th, and as Americans, but how much of that is sort of directly from the, I guess, magnitude of that it just created this question asking more than anything ever else has before. And, are you seeing your colleagues feeling more empowered to say things, probably because of your steadfastness over all these years? And then finally, do you condemn October 7th?
Yeah.
No, just kidding.
I condemn Israel and the United States and all oppressions and imperial wars.
That's what I'm talking about.
Very good.
And
That was an easy answer.
And I never ever condemn Palestinian resistance and anyone resistance around the world. Those who are here and who are around the world, write it up.
That's right.
Okay, so anyway, move on to the next question. I just wanted to say something, actually, just commenting on what Saeed said. I want to also go a step further and say, in terms of organizing, one thing from our experience at San Francisco State, we actually had an amazing Palestinian journalist, Jamal Dajani, teaching a course on Arab media images. We had him teaching, and actually he was doing us a favor, because he doesn't need the lousy money that the university was paying. He really was doing us in order to build the program, because the university canceled the 2 faculty lines, our searches, because the Zionists protested, so university president punished us in response to the Zionists and canceled the faculty line and left me 1-person program to demolish the program, okay? And so Jamal did us a favor, Peabody Award-winning journalist, and came to teach. Little by little, the university reduced his, because when you are a lecturer, you actually, according to union, you have longevity. And then after a while, you can be fired. You can actually become like a union, like a faculty, tenured faculty like me. Then we talked to the media department and so on, and really tried to work with them to see if they can actually have his course cross-listed with them, so we can have more students learned how to do media, broadcasting, and so on. All of a sudden, the media department, all of them, journalists, froze. And they were the young students who were producing the student newspaper. At some point, really activists, wonderful students, all of a sudden, when our classroom that was with Layla Khalid was shut down, all of a sudden they actually carried out, word by word, from lawfare accusations against us, which faculty hearing panels ruled in our favor, random faculty panels and so on. Now we cannot actually have students, even students who come to my classes, are unable don't know what happened, don't know the history with all the documentation. So what I'm saying is that students are not learning, a lot are not learning in journalism classes how to actually be critical thinking, and many are learning how to do the media writing, for example, like let's say Columbia School of Journalism, is doing it to become the next New York Times journalist. Sometimes they happen upon critical ways, and that's we'll get the excellent reporters and the alternative media and so on. So I am wondering, is there a way? Yesterday I was talking to Ayman Ismail, just by chance, and he's talking about an association. I'm talking about further, not only association from ours. I'm talking about possibly here at this conference and beyond, maybe having some kind of like really mentoring program for all the people, all the organizations that are challenging the dominant hegemonic media, that whether they are doing it conspiracy style or they are doing it because of who owns the media or because of all the above or because they're right-wing, they are writing the same story. Things happen and they don't record them at all. Or some things happen and then the next day they give us a story about why Israel cannot handle the prisons, because there are problems in the technicality, because they have low staff, because this has nothing to do with why Israel wants to crush the Palestinians. I mean, we see it in the New York Times, we read it. So is it possible for some people to come together who are knowledgeable to say, we want to be able to encourage more? How do you do it? How do you get across? How are you able to, all the amazing and very talented people like you and like people who have spoken here, Rania, Ayman, everybody who has been doing incredible work to figure out how to encourage young people to be, I mean, we know that Israel is targeting journalists. We know that. So how can we bring more people, young people who are in the classes, and just encourage them to do more, teach them to do more, mentor them, and have their backs when they are targeted? I think we really, really, really need this. And work with all the medias, not just Arab media, not just Palestinian, in multiple languages. I know that the COPCON, which is people who started this program, mentoring program, that is after Andrew COPCON, who was the editor of The Nation, but they only do 7 awards a year because they can't afford more. But we can actually do that, an ongoing program. You know, and this is something like the ADC can do that, but there is also many media organizations, Newspaper Guild, they've been attacked a lot. So is there a way we can do it? And people who have worked in journalists, you can, you know, if you can dedicate, let's say, an hour a week. You don't have to do it every week, but say maybe I can do 2 weeks a month or 2 weeks to 3 weeks a year or something like that. And then this will be something, not even a public university. This is who signed up. And then young people are getting mentored to do that. And this is something that maybe even an internship program that they can count for their credit in the university. And we can connect students in Bir Zayt, in Beit Lahem, the students in Gaza who are actually getting training by many of us because their universities have been. So I'm just wondering if we can think like beyond the box and see if we can do something of this sort, because that would be a you know, kind of like proactive step, and just take things into our own hand and encourage that. Yeah, I know you're hearing something.
Yeah, there's some snapping or clicking, or please, whoever's doing that, stop something going on. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so that's my kind of like, in response to what you're doing, because you're fighting and you're still in the trenches and you're always frustrated and you're fighting on behalf of all of us. But this is something that they can also, like, learning how to even share. It's not just something you share intuitively, but also we have a strategy, you know, how to do that. We're talking justice. Okay, now in terms of the faculty, I think there is a problem around intellectuals in general. I'm not talking only about professors. I'm talking also about even our own colleagues. I will say, and I think we all read the news, after October 7th, okay, either everybody disappeared,
Yeah.
we could not find anybody. Everybody who's willing to give interviews, the first to jump and say, hey, I'm available, or just say something, so tweet or something, so somebody will say, oh, come, we want to talk to you. Nobody was available. Nobody was available. Or there is this statement, one after, after we condemn this criminal, horrible massacre against civilians, the worst civilian that killed 1,200 Israeli civilians. By the way, nobody even checked how many quote-unquote civilians and how many were soldiers and how many were killed by the Israeli military. I mean, this is the 1,200. People did not dissect it. Everybody keeps repeating the same figure, and even that, not. Okay. And then, so for a very long time, condemnation, and some of us who You know, that's like, why are you shocked by that? The whole thing, and the Israel defending itself, I mean, isn't this line itself? Which borders are talking about? Nobody is even asking, which border is Israel talking about? Is it the border of 47? Is it 48? Is it armistice? Is it 1967? Which borders? Is it annexing Jerusalem? You know, and why are you accepting these borders as the borders of Israel when Israel hasn't defined? Or is it the borders when they expanded in Lebanon or Syria? Which borders? I mean, if you want to talk about border theory, let's sit down and talk about it. Nobody asks this question. Everybody self-defense. So invaders. Who are the invaders? The people who are actually going back to their villages? What's invaders? And the kibbutz Siyam, and actually they weren't even targeted. It was Gaza Brigade that was targeted. Let's tell, and it was liberation of prisoners. Nobody talks about that. Nobody, but because nobody listens to the operator. You may not agree. Historically, until now, Palestinians have no agreement over hijacking planes. Nobody until now, since '68. Until now, there is no agreement whether external operations are okay or not. Nobody, until now, there is a big debate in the Palestinian movement, right? In very rich debate, whether it is okay or it's not okay. So it's like, why we're having debates about that too. It's a very different kind of debate in the eyes of the fascists, this is one, okay? So then this is something we engage in responding to their questions instead of asking our own questions. So I think that's very problematic. Secondly, many of our scholars and intellectuals, they come and they say, we need to respond to you. Like when Abu Mazen said this stupid, as usual, statements about Jews and so on, everybody rushed and apologized. Why? Like everybody had to rush and apologize for 9/11, 2001. Why? We have to apologize for Osama bin Laden and these images that the United States has created in the first place. It's not, why do we have to answer at all? It has nothing to do with us. So I think this was a very big problem when we jump to respond, instead of us jumping to the genocide that's going. And I want to see all of these intellectuals now speaking when children, bones are showing, when heads are being blown, when people day in and day, we can't even know where people are buried. We don't know where the bones are. Where is the outrage? So to me, honestly, I'm not even willing, and I will say, I'm not even willing to engage any of my colleagues who is going to actually stand and try to have even a rational conversation about that. Because I think, and if you say you are an intellectual, you're going to stay in the cubicle and do whatever you want to do, that's fine. But if you're going to say you're going to engage in public discussion, go to hell. I'm not going to do it. The last point I would say is that we see today there is a big contested public space. Trump administration and the Zionists are unable to control public space. Yeah. This is why they're getting so nasty. This is why they are targeting students. This is why they're picking them by eyes. This is what they're jumping. They do not know what to do. The Israel and the Zionists and Netanyahu and the Zionist movement are rushing because they're running out of time. Of course they are conducting genocide because this is what the best they can do. But they do not know what to do. But now it's a question for the academics. Where do you stand? When you are called upon, are you going to go name names like McCarthyism, engage in new McCarthyism? Or are you going to stand for what's right? Instead of babbling, are you going to cut parts of your syllabus? Are you going to be silencing? Are you going to be standing aside and say, oh, this is only about our rights to have our campuses, academic rights, and so on? Or are you going to also talk about Palestine? Is that okay or not? And I think more people are doing it, and some people are being fired. So it is a very big battle. It's polarized. And I think some people are doing it, and the students, our students, their students are showing us whether you are really hypocritical or you're on the right way.
Well, as we wrap up here and wrap up the conference, and like I said, I couldn't think of a better way than to wrap up the conference. I've seen a lot of you taking pictures with people throughout the weekend. You got to take pictures with these three Palestinian American legends when you're outside. As we wrap up, I'll just take a final thought from all of you is to, how do you again, see things playing out, or what message do you have for all the people who are here as to keep going? I mean, I think all of you kind of touched on this idea of, at least I heard, that like we're winning, where things are going in the direction that we want it to go. How do we finally get there? And you know, and how important is the issue of what Professor Rabab was talking about, just staying focused, like clearly focused on keep the main thing, as they say. I always say to people, when people ask me, why don't you talk about this Arab government or this people, I say, listen, man, every minute you're not talking about Israel, you're not talking about Israel. So let's make sure we stay focused on the main thing. But as we wrap up here, just a minute or so from each of you, you know, how are you optimistic? What is your message to people? Should we keep going in the direction? What changes do we have to make? Whatever you want to say, but I think these are the messages that will really resonate with people as we close out this conference.
Thank you. I just want to say one footnote.
Yes.
That in my university, me and Noor Arakat are now branded, and they didn't post my courses. Yeah. They're not trying to fire me, but they want me to
quit.
Yeah. But I will not. Yes. Now the lawyers are dealing with the issue.
Sounds like what they're doing to Palestinians in general.
When one student wrote an article about me, accusing me of anti-Semitism, 32 students replied. So that is amazing. My reward. I was teaching this Arab-Israeli conflict for many years, and it's most popular. But anyhow, we'll go back to the issue. Yeah. I think, yes, we are winning at the level of the grassroots people, the ordinary people in the street. We are. But we have to multiply our efforts. We have to do more work. I mean, we have to show two things. First, the depth of the tragedy, the depth of the genocide. We have to show it all the time and present it in every way we can. That's one thing. And the second, we have also to stress that our people will never be defeated.
That's right.
Yes.
We will. Palestinian people are the most resilient people. It's been over 100 years. Waves of atrocities are committed, one after the other, and the Palestinians will come back and fight for their rights. Without the Palestinian gaining their freedom, real freedom, self-determination, independence, dignity, this war will continue. And I'm sure the other side will be losing.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amir, and thank you, everybody. I just want to say something that you mentioned about Arab governments and, you know, being really trapped or fallen into this trap. Yeah. Remember, the only reason you have these dysfunctional Arab governments and this dysfunctional Arab governance is basically the state of Israel.
Right.
The reason you have this fragmentation in the Arab world is basically the state of Israel, because that's how they sustain it. They steal their resources so they can aid Israel, because Israel serves the imperialist paradigm and the imperialist goal, and so on. Yes, we are winning. You know, I went for 3 days. I went to New York to also cover the General Assembly. And from the moment I walked out of the garage, I drive up there, you know, I see nothing but Palestinian flags. You know, whether it's the person, the delivery guy on a bicycle and so on, or the little, you know, the little carts where they sell hot dogs and so on. And these guys are not Palestinians. But wherever you look, you see the Palestinian flag, you see the kufiya, you see these things, the expressions of solidarity with the Palestinians. So I think we are winning. And if you look at the public space, you know, whether on social media, whatever platform there is, you know, unless it's Trump's platforms, you know, through social, I don't know.
True social.
I don't really look
Sorry,
at it.
we shouldn't talk about
that. Okay, anyway. So we're winning, but the struggle is hard. The struggle is hard, and we need to you know, I don't know, we need to be doing something to basically allow the Arab people to come, you know, to the basket, come be, you know, show expressive moods of solidarity, not only in words of condemnation, but we are winning, to answer your question.
Great, wonderful. Professor Rabab.
Yes, I 100% agree. And I think also, first, the Arab people are rising, and we don't even hear enough how many are imprisoned, how many have to go to mukhabarat. How many, I mean, there is so much going on. And I've been, I think I mentioned to some people, I've been attending meetings of Kulluna Gaza, Kulluna Palestine, and honestly, I'm learning a lot about Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt, Iraq, Kuwait, Oman. I mean, there is so much activism going on, and people who are involved are in prison, revolving door all the time. So, and you know why the Arab governments are also anxious. So there is something going on. Around the world too, all of this blocking of the ships, boycotting Israel, there is things happening. And this is also impacted in the United Nations and elsewhere, the definitions also, because they would not move if the streets are not moving. The streets are imposing themselves on that. I also think it's a very important thing that a lot of people in the Palestinian movement are talking more with each other, are debating more. I think there is something that, I mean, people who are discussing, and I think something October 7 did, is made us think with each other more. Even thinking about the tactics, thinking about the thought. I think it democratized a lot all the resistance groups, because the groups themselves are discussing by themselves and with each other. And we see the statements that come out. If you follow all the statements, the way people are kinder to each other. I'm talking about within the broader resistance movement, intellectuals, fighters. We don't know who, I mean, we don't know who is fighting in the field, who's not. And we shouldn't, because if we know they've been assassinated already. But there is something that is this old discussion that's enabling comparative from the past. And this is really important also for us to learn about the past too, and learn about the things that we won, we didn't, and compare with other struggles as well, and connect with people around the world. I mean, there is something that is changing, and I think, you know what I said last night, there is something about Palestine, not from a narrow nationalist or kind of like we are better than anybody else or Premier Olympics, but there is something that is raised and should be proud of, that is engaging in solidarity and liberation for everybody. And we're learning too, and we're getting humbled that the whole world is what? I mean, it's incredible. You see the flotilla? What is this? I mean, the way that they are coming, and honestly, if I say in Arabic, it was amazing, amazing, amazing that all this coming in the and now there is ships coming from Italy, they're coming from Spain, people are joining, and it's an amazing impression. This is what we need. We need more action, we need more boycott, we need to isolate Israel more, and Zionism is collapsing. It's unable to hold on to Jews within Israel, and the younger generation of Jews that says, not in my name. The project for me is liberation of Palestine. This is what is Zionism. It's not going to happen tomorrow. And we're going to lose so many more people, and we shouldn't lose anybody. But we are, and it's imposed upon us. This battle is imposed upon us. It's not, we didn't create it.
That's right.
But Israel is never going to accept a bunch of people, fighters, showing that it is mightiness, has been challenged, and they want to keep crushing, because how dare you? For them is how dare you, and for us, too bad. You came to our land, you crushed us, you destroy us, you want to kill us, you need to get out. Stop. If you stop, everybody will stop, and free Palestine.
That's right.
Very good.
Well,
Very good.
you can keep applauding. I'd like them all to stand up, because this is the picture you should be taking of the conference. Professor Abdelhamid Siyam, Saeed Arakat, and Professor Rabab Abdulhadi. A great way to end the conference. I know Abid will be out. Free Palestine, and see you all next year.
Thank you.